Gallaudet is so beautiful. I am hard of hearing.
Deaf-blind.
7th generation deaf Muslim woman. I have a cochlear implant. Hearing.
I am Black Indian from Pakistan. I am from India.
I am a Pacific Islander.
I am Mexican.
International. There are many ways to be deaf.
Socializing is the best.
I feel human.
Diversity. We have so much communication.
I met many new friends. I feel like I'm at home. It is my safe place.
I feel like it is another family.
Gallaudet really shows what deaf people can do. Go Gallaudet!
advantages and challenges of allowing deaf individuals to serve in the U.S. Armed Forces. This debate could not come at a more important time for our nation. Not only does America face serious national security challenges from great power competition with Russia and China, global pandemics, transnational terrorism, climate change, but we also do it in the midst of a challenging recruitment environment for our military. It's more important than ever that our policymakers have a robust discussion about the opportunities we provide for national service and for military service. As been pointed out, this is the first type of debate between mixed teams from both institutions representing the best of our democracy. And as a former debater myself, congratulations for your perseverance to make your side win. I'm not taking sides, though. The opportunity for diverse perspectives to come together in a respectful space, to share opinions, to find solutions to complex issues is important. Having this type of inclusive debate is so important, I can't stress it enough, to making our democracy strong for all of us. Our society only works well when everyone's perspective is acknowledged. And the deaf individuals have so often been excluded from so many aspects of our society, including the military. Your experience, your insights, and your perspectives are so very important. And sharing them will create a more nuanced discussion and will better inform policy and decision makers like myself. By being engaged with one another, respectfully and thoughtfully in dialogue, we learn more about each other. We break down barriers. Instead, we build bridges between communities. This fosters more respect and strengthens our democracy. So I am proud to be here, and as was pointed out to me by the president, I remember watching it on TV when Gallaudet made the decision that it would have a president who was deaf. So congratulations on your historic groundbreaking in the past, and I know you're going to be breaking a lot of ground for all of us in the future. Thank you again for the invitation to be here tonight, and I do mean it. I wish best of luck to all the participants. You decide with the judges how the debate ends. Thank you, and enjoy your evening.
I want to take this moment to thank Congresswoman McCollum for a beautiful speech tonight. Thank you so much. Congressman Takano of California, on July 5th, 2022, Mark Takano co-introduced House Concurrent Resolution number 96, recognizing the historical significance, the 70th anniversary of Miller v. Board of Education of the District of Columbia. This case is truly historic because it was brought on by a mother, Louise B. Miller, on behalf of her deaf children. She sued to end the practice of sending Black deaf students out of the district to be educated. After Louise B. Miller, that practice stopped, and Black deaf students stayed in the DC area to be educated. Romel?
More relevant to tonight, Takano, Democrat from California, introduced the Keith Nolan Air Force Deaf Demonstration Act, which would allow deaf and hard of hearing individuals to serve in the United States Air Force in a demonstration program
Now, unfortunately, Congressman Mark Takano could not be here in person with us this evening, but he created a very special video that we'd like to show the audience. Now, before we hit play, I do want to recognize some of his staffers who I'm told are joining us here in the audience. If you wouldn't mind standing, please stand so that you could be recognized. Thank you. For me personally, I am from California. I just moved about exactly a year ago here to the East Coast. California is here as home for me, and so to see Congressman Takano support this movement is just heartening.
And you're not the only Californian there. I am too. Very proud.
Please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Congressman Mark Takano, representative for the 39th Congressional District of California. It is an absolute pleasure to be addressing you today to kick off an exciting debate between Gallaudet University and the United States Naval Academy. The topic for today, the inclusion of deaf individuals in the armed forces, is an issue that is close to my heart. As both ranking member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee and co-chair of the Congressional Deaf Caucus, I serve constituencies that both of your schools overlap with. As the ranking member and former chairman of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, I have witnessed how diversity in our military makes us a stronger force. African Americans, Japanese Americans, women, and LGBTQ Americans are all groups that, while once barred from service, fought for their inclusion and have since served in every branch of our military. Their participation has made our armed forces stronger, more adaptable, and uniquely qualified to face the challenges that we are presented with on a global scale. As a co-chair of the Congressional Deaf Caucus, the participation of deaf and hard of hearing Americans in the armed Good evening, everyone. I'm Congressman Mark Takano, representative for the 39th Congressional District of California. It is an absolute pleasure to be addressing you today to kick off an exciting debate between Gallaudet. Good evening, everyone. I'm Congressman. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I'm Congressman Mark Takano, representative for the 39th Congressional District of California. It is an absolute pleasure to be addressing you today to kick off an exciting debate between Gallaudet University and the United States Naval Academy. The topic for today, the inclusion of deaf individuals in the armed forces, is an issue that is close to my heart. As both ranking member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee and co-chair of the Congressional Deaf Caucus, I serve constituencies that both of your schools overlap with. As the ranking member and former chairman of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, I have witnessed how diversity in our military makes us a stronger force. African Americans, Japanese Americans, women, and LGBTQ Americans are all groups that, while once barred from service, fought for their inclusion and have since served in every branch of our military. Their participation has made our armed forces stronger, more adaptable, and uniquely qualified to face the challenges that we are presented with on a global scale. As a co-chair of the Congressional Deaf Caucus, the participation of deaf and hard of hearing Americans in the armed forces is an issue that I have been personally. Good evening, everyone. I'm Congressman Mark Takano, representative for the 39th Congressional District of California. It is an absolute pleasure to be addressing you today to kick off an exciting debate between Gallaudet University and the United States Naval Academy. The topic for today, the inclusion of deaf individuals in the armed forces, is an issue that is close to my heart. As both ranking member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee and co-chair of the Congressional Deaf Caucus, I serve constituencies that both of your schools overlap with. As the ranking member and former chairman of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, I have witnessed how diversity in our military makes us a stronger force. African Americans, Japanese Americans, women, and LGBTQ Americans are all groups that, while once barred from service, fought for their inclusion and have since served in every branch of our military. Their participation has made our armed forces stronger, more adaptable, and uniquely qualified to face the challenges that we are presented with on a global scale. As a co-chair of the Congressional Deaf Caucus, the participation of deaf and hard of hearing Americans in the armed forces is an issue that I have been personally interested in for many years. I look forward to a lively and fruitful conversation and to hearing the merits of each argument presented today. Finally, I applaud all of you participating today for your commitment to debate. The skills you are developing here, crafting a well-reasoned argument, accounting for multiple perspectives, articulating your point of view, and researching thoroughly are foundational to participating in civic life. We need more young people like you, individuals dedicated to tackling the pressing political issues of today head-on with well-reasoned debate. And for the Gallaudet University debate team, I want to congratulate you on a historic season as the first team using American Sign Language to compete in a multi-college competition. You are changing the landscape for future debaters and re-envisioning what is possible for both deaf and for hearing Americans. And who knows, maybe someday you'll be debating in American Sign Language on the floor of the United States House of Representatives. Thank you for the invitation to speak to you, and good luck to everyone.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
It's good to see all your faces.
I'm Aubrey Mormon. I'm a beautiful black man with curly hair, light skin. I'm wearing a gray polo with our Gallaudet debate team logo. I'm wearing a watch and some pants with some white shoes with some green trim.
I am Aubrey Bauer. I'm a first-year Gallaudet debater. I'm a white woman with my hair slicked back in a bun. I've got a gray polo shirt, black pants, and my Apple Watch. Tonight we're going to talk to you a bit about the debate resolution and what exactly our debaters will be debating tonight.
In a recent study in support of a long-standing policy that deaf people are disqualified from serving in the United States military, the Department of Defense concluded that significant barriers remain to allowing individuals with disabilities to access the uniformed services.
The USNA Gallaudet University debate topic challenges the debaters to assess this claim more broadly, the desirability of deaf people serving in the United States military. Tonight we'll find out what the United States Navy's view is.
To win, the affirmative team must show persuasively that, first of all, deaf people are capable of being combat ready, and second, that it is in the public interest to allow deaf people to serve in the U.S. military.
Now, the negative wins by rebutting the proposition that allowing deaf people to serve in the military is in the public interest. It can win by either refuting the specific claim that deaf people are capable enough for combat, or refuting the general claim that a military with deaf people is more desirable for the country. That's how the negative team wins.
Thank you.
Good luck, teams.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
You feel good out there, everyone? Great. My name is Clyja, and I am a first-year Gallaudet debater.
Your visual description.
Oh, that's right, my visual description. I'm a black man. I have a whitish polo shirt on. I'm wearing gray pants with black shoes and a watch. I'm wearing some earrings, a nice chain, and that's it for me. Over to you, Lorelei.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lorelei Bechtel, and I'm a second-year Gallaudet debater. I'm wearing a blue collared shirt with a Gallaudet logo. I have blonde hair, a navy headband, khaki pants, black shoes, and earrings. I also wear glasses.
Now, you have noticed, I'm sure, that we have two teams present tonight, one arguing the affirmative, the other the negative. Each team is comprised of two people, one from Gallaudet University and one from the United States Naval Academy. We have assigned their positions to their side. Their debate today does not necessarily reflect their personal opinions regarding the topic.
Secondly, the affirmative and negative teams have had 3 joint practices over Zoom to get ready for tonight's debate.
Our first affirmative speaker will be from Gallaudet, and that will be Trent Mora. Yes! Big round of applause. Indeed. This is his first year and first debate, the very first time he will compete in a formal debate event tonight. Very exciting. He's from Austin, Texas, and is a freshman. I see a lot of Austinites and Texans. He majors in philosophy, and our debate coach is working hard to get him to minor in government also.
All right, our second affirmative speaker, the United States Naval Academy, will be Jason Santiago. Jason is a midshipman, class of 2023 at the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. He is majoring in political science and minoring in Arabic. Midshipman Santiago was born in Mayagüez, Puerto Rico, and raised throughout the continental United States. After transferring to the USNA in 2019, he became a member of the debate team, as well as a member of the Foreign Affairs Conference at the USNA. He's been a member of the team for 4 years now, and has been, in this academic year, captain of his debate team.
I must also add that Lorelei has also served as support for the affirmative team during the joint practices with Trent. So a round of applause for Lorelei as well.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Neela, and Gallaudet debater. Oh, and I forgot my visual description. I'm a white woman with brown hair pulled to the back. I'm wearing a gray shirt and black shoes, black pants.
Hi, everyone. I'm Talia Guter, and this is, I am a second-year debater. I'm a white woman with brown hair. I'm wearing a gray polo shirt, black pants.
Great. We wanted to take a moment to tell you about the negative side arguing tonight. The first negative speaker will be Lexi Hill from Tyler, Texas. And Lexi is a double major in history and government with a minor in English. This is her third year of debate and her second as captain for the debate team. After graduation in May, she plans to pursue a degree in political science. Brava.
Now, as for the United States Naval Academy, we have Choi. He is a midshipman in the class of 2024 for the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. 11th Company and a political science major. Midshipman Choi was raised in Orange County, California. Joined the debate team in the fall of his second year. And Midshipman Choi will graduate in May 2024 and commissioning into either the Navy or the Marine Corps.
Fantastic, thank you. Hello, everyone. Hello. I'm Franco Bippus. I'm a first-year debater for Gallaudet, and visual description. I'm a white male with brown hair, gray shirt, tan pants.
Hello. I am Amelia Palmer, rather. I'm a black woman with burgundy glasses. I'm wearing a gray shirt, polo shirt, black pants, and black shoes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Clark, and I'm wearing a white shirt, light brown hair, white male, and I am going to recognize the judges. Please stand when your name is called, please. Our first judge is Megan McCardle, who is a columnist for the Washington Post, who has been writing about business, politics, and public policy for nearly 2 decades. She lives in Washington, D.C. with her husband and her very large dog.
Now our second judge of the evening is Dr. Carolyn Washington. Yes, big round of applause. Dr. Washington is a retired Army officer colonel. She's an accomplished former senior foreign area officer, military diplomat, and attaché. Dr. Washington holds a PhD in Global Gender Studies from the University at Buffalo. She also holds 2 master's degrees: National Security Affairs from the Naval Postgraduate School, and a Master of Strategic Studies from Army War College. Welcome, Dr. Washington.
Thank you. And our third and final judge is Heather Artinian. Heather is a deaf attorney from the Washington, D.C. office of Latham and Watkins, where she is a member of the White Collar Defense and Investigations practice. She is proudly from Long Island, New York. For her undergraduate studies, she graduated from Georgetown University with a degree in government and a minor in justice and peace studies. Heather also graduated from Harvard Law School. Now, let us briefly explain the judging criteria that will be used to determine the winner tonight. Judges will consider the following elements when assessing students' debate performance in order of importance:
Solid logic, reasoning, and analysis.
Compelling evidence, persuasive storytelling,
Overarching presentation of a clash of ideas and values, and
eloquent, organized, and civil communication. Good luck, debaters.
good luck. Okay. It is time. Who has a phone? If you have a phone, pull it out.
I got eyes on you. Hey, you got phones. No
Take your
excuse.
phone
Get those
out.
phones out. Come on. Bring them out. Bring them out.
Fantastic. I've asked you to get your phones out because Rommel and I are very curious, as I'm sure some of you are. We wanted to poll our audience both before and after the debate to see if your opinion has been swayed after watching this debate. Should deaf people allowed to be served in the military? Has your opinion changed or did it not? We're very curious. Right, Rommel?
I know. I'm pretty curious. So we'll have a QR code appearing on screen. We want to get all of you to use your cameras to scan that image and enter our poll.
All right, we're still counting your votes. There's still more votes coming in.
Do we need the QR code a little bigger? Can we get that? Can we enlarge that QR code?
We'll wait. Let's see what your answers are. You have another few minutes.
So the image is frozen. We can't. All right. We have it on both screens now. Can we zoom in again? Zoom in on that QR. Thank you. Okay. Keep voting. Keep voting. Keep voting.
Send us your votes. I think we have still more votes coming in. People are still thinking.
Looks like 78% affirmative right now. Wow.
We want every head counted. You know, people are watching this via live stream as well, so I think that they're voting on a live stream. We have 333 votes so far we've tallied.
Wow. 333.
340.
And rising.
Those votes keep coming in. 347. We want everyone to feel counted. We'll wait another minute. Sure, we'll wait one more minute. Send us your votes.
Okay, I think we can continue with the program now and tell you a little bit about this. We're also going to be comparing this with the post-debate measure as well. So let's look at this percentage. It looks like a lot of people here are saying that, what do we have? Some 79% of them are saying that deaf people should be able to serve in the military. We'll have to see what that looks like afterwards.
You know, it's very interesting. I know that each team has powerful debaters that will be standing on the stage tonight trying to persuade you for their argument. It'll be quite interesting to watch. Fascinated to see what will happen.
So we want to walk you through the format now. So this is a mixed pairs competition, and so we'll first have opening affirmative. We'll come up and have 7 minutes. Then we'll have a period of cross-examination, CX, where they'll be able to cross-examine and ask questions of the speaker. Then negative opening will have 7 minutes, after which there'll be an opposing cross, each in turn. You'll see this pattern play out throughout the debate. 6 minutes, correction to the interpretation.
I'd also like to remind you that this type of debate is incredibly unique. Remember, as I mentioned, the dynamic of each team is a mixture of each school. So one representative of Gallaudet on the affirmative side, along with one representative of USNA, And the same for the negative team. As was mentioned, they have 6 minutes to debate. And then in the second round, after what Ramel just explained, the second round, the second affirmative speaker comes to the stage and has 6 minutes to support their position and rebut the negative position. The negative position will then have the exact same opportunity to present for 6 minutes, support the negative position, and then rebut the affirmative.
And after opening arguments and rebuttal arguments, then we'll get some judges' feedback on that, and at which point that helps our debaters craft their closing so that they can come forward, make some adjustments in their closing, and try to sew up the debate in those final arguments.
After both teams have debated, they will have an opportunity, and the judges will confer. Then the teams will have an opportunity to craft a closing argument. Each team will have 6 minutes for their closing argument. And that will end our debate.
After the conclusion of the debate, the judges will leave the room to confer and tabulate the winner. Then the announcement of the winner will be given by President Cordano.
All right. Who's ready? Are you ready?
I know I'm ready. All right. Are we ready to get this debate rolling? I know we've waited a long time for this day to come to pass.
Yes.
And now, we'll call our first opening affirmative speaker, Trent Mora, to the stage for his 6-minute opening statement.
Before I begin, I'd like to mention a few things. This is my first time debating. And I should offer a visual description. So I'm a brown-skinned person wearing a blue blazer over top of a black mock turtleneck. I'm wearing black slacks and black shoes. I wear glasses, and I have my hair pulled back. Good evening, and thank you for attending. I would like to express my gratitude to the judges and all attendees for attending this debate. It's a very important topic, whether or not deaf people should be allowed to serve in our armed forces. Please begin my time. As the affirmative, we have a burden of showing that deaf people are combat ready and that this is in the public interest. Keith Nolan has been a staunch advocate for the admission of deaf people into the military for years. He entered ROTC and went through for the first 2 levels with high marks and was the top 15% of his class. However, he was denied entry to the 3rd level of ROTC training. Keith also earned distinctions in the U.S. military. He wore badges that he is allowed to wear on his ROTC uniform. However, he was denied admission to that 3rd level simply because he is deaf. Today, we have many capable deaf people in this very room, in this very audience, who could serve in and contribute to the military, but they would all be turned away without a second thought. The military's reasoning for this exemption is a hasty overgeneralization. They incorrectly assume that all deaf people cannot serve in the military. Yet deaf people are combat ready, because communication, not hearing, is the key to being combat ready. Today, my partner and I will affirm that deaf people are combat ready and that their participation in the military is in the public interest. We will also show that deaf people can bring language with them that will benefit the military and will even help with the recruitment crisis. In the military, there are 2 levels of readiness. There is combat readiness that is at the individual level, and then there is also institutional readiness at the institutional level. On the individual scope, For a soldier to be combat ready, they must be able to respond to any order, anytime, anywhere, as given to them by their commanding officer. This is the definition by the Department of Defense. The hearing requirement is too general and does not account for technological advancements or the diversity within the deaf community. Deaf people are combat ready because they can pass all moral, physical, and intellectual requirements to be a soldier. The only thing that they would fail is the hearing test. You can use technologies and weapons in the same way that a hearing person could. And 90% of roles in the military are non-combat. Even within that remaining 10%, deaf people could be integrated into those units with varying levels of accommodation. The reason why 90% of the roles are non-combat is that modern warfare is a complex operational environment. Warfare is now very reliant on technology, computers, and intelligence operations. Most of this work is done behind screens. It's not the 1900s anymore. Back then, what would have required an elite squad today can be accomplished with a drone attack from someone miles away operating behind a screen. The nature of national security has changed. The Israeli Defense Force has shown and has plenty of evidence that deaf people can be integrated just fine in non-combat positions. Keith, for example, outperformed his hearing counterparts on various tasks. We have faculty, staff, and students here in this very room who are perfectly lethal enough for combat and who can communicate effectively enough for combat, who are valuable enough for the military. Hearing loss does not make them less combat ready. But also, combat has evolved. So what it means to be combat ready today is different than what it once was. Combat readiness is contextual. This is not to say that deaf people are as combat ready as a Navy SEAL or a Green Beret. This is not what we're suggesting. But neither is most of the military, even though they're hearing. They're not as combat ready as a Navy SEAL either. It depends on the rank and the mission that is assigned to be combat ready. Combat readiness could be a drone operator, and the expectations of this person are very different than that of a Navy SEAL or someone who is manning an artillery unit. Now, to be sure, we are not asking for standards to be lowered. It is about removing unnecessary standards and contingent barriers that do not need to be there. We recognize that standards exist to make sure that our military is ready for an evolving world. We argue that hearing is not a standard that is any longer needed to be combat ready. We meet and exceed hearing standards every day, all over the country, in the private sector and the public sector. There's no reason that we could not meet or exceed them in the military. We bring value and talent to the private sector and the public sector. We also bring a unique language with us. That language can be beneficial to the military in their linguistics arsenal. The military now is quite reliant on auditory communication, which limits the options on the field and off the field. ASL is an efficient form of communication. For example, in the heat of battle, noise levels may make auditory communication more difficult and induces hearing loss among hearing soldiers. So speech is not something that can be relied on. And they may also experience temporary deafness as a response to sound, while a deaf soldier would still be able to communicate and thus have options to communicate in those settings. In situations where quiet is needed, ASL is also beneficial. Sign language can also work underwater, across windows, and across varying degrees of sight lines and distances across a field. The integration of ASL into the military's communication protocols would strengthen the network and give diverse and reliable ways of transmitting messages. This is not in the public interest to exclude deaf people simply because we would miss their value. But we have a bigger issue to confront, specifically the crisis of military recruitment, which directly threatens our national security. Recruitment rates are at an all-time low, and officers are concerned about recruiting people from the National Guard to serve in our armed forces. Currently, only about 25% of young people even qualify for military enrollment, and the military struggles to maintain its readiness in a world of shifting geopolitical landscapes. This is an urgent crisis. We have missed our recruitment goals by 10,000 people in 2022, and it is anticipated that this crisis will only get worse. Removing the hearing requirement would help alleviate this crisis by tapping into an untapped pool of deaf people with the qualifications and talent that the military will find valuable. And if a situation is not adapted to us, then the military may have to draft again if they cannot resolve this crisis. The last time we had a draft was 50 years ago and people left the country. This is not a burden that we want to put on the American people. What is in the American public's best interest is to have a standing army that is ready for whatever situation may arise. Can we really afford to discard the potential that the deaf population presents in the face of this recruitment crisis? In summary, we affirm that deaf people are combat ready because we can communicate and we can do anything except hear perfectly. We affirm that removing the hearing requirement is not only in the public interest, but is also a necessary step toward addressing the recruitment crisis. Let us come together and recognize the value that deaf people can bring to the military. And in doing so, let's make sure that the military is inclusive, strong, and ready for the future. Thank you.
All right. Now we will have Choi from the USNA, the negative team, to the stage to cross-examine Trent Mora. You will have 4 minutes for this cross-examination.
Before I start, I'd like to describe myself. I'm a Korean man, black hair, Naval Academy uniform. Okay, starting my time. All right, so how do you propose to ensure that deaf individuals can communicate effectively with their fellow service members in high-pressure situations? Could you illustrate what this might look like?
So through shared experiences with their troop, through training, and through varying accommodations, such as using American Sign Language, interpreters, or captioning.
Okay, so you can see that interpreters must be present?
No.
So if not, then would this require all other service members to be proficient at ASL?
No. In the deaf community, there is wide variation in types of communication and hearing abilities, so it is hard to say decisively that there would be one size fits all.
Right, but in their interaction with hearing people in the military, right, to communicate with these hearing people, would the hearing people be required to learn ASL, be proficient at it?
Not necessarily.
Okay, so how can deaf people connect closely with the hearing if they do not share a common language then?
Deaf people can also be bilingual. And through the same ways that we connect with anyone else, through a shared experience and time together.
Okay. So then would you not concede that the quality of connection is different between the deaf or the hearing who do not sign but rather communicate through an interpreter?
I think that's a bit subjective. I'm not sure what standard of quality could determine that.
Okay, moving on to the point about warfare being reliant on technology and that most happen behind screens. Are you aware that the people who operate drones are still required to undergo physical tests to maintain their status in the military?
Could you restate the question?
So this is about the most of the warfare happening behind screens nowadays. Are you aware that these people who do work behind screens are required to pass a physical test to maintain their status within the military?
I'm aware.
Okay. Then what would you say would happen? So you say perfect deaf people are perfectly lethal and can communicate. What happens when a drone strike is used on the bunker in which they operate? There are no lights and communicate that presents a barrier to communication.
Well, in ASL, you can also do what's called protactile communication, which is a way of using American Sign Language without access to sight or sound, which can prove to be beneficial in unexpected situations as well.
Okay, so then the hearing service members would also be required to learn or be proficient in tactile sign language as well, protactile communication.
Not necessarily.
Okay, then what if you're separated from your teammate and you have no idea how to locate them? You're not there, you're not able to touch them.
Then there is a communication in those instances, yes. In that very specific situation, yes.
Okay. We'll move on. Are you aware that on average it takes a person around 7 years to be fully fluent in ASL?
Yes, I'm aware.
Would this not actually deter people then? For example, the hearing people from joining the military if they are required or if they're expected to know that, because in those high pressure situations where their life depends on this communication, it would be necessary?
One minute, I think, to refer to the captions.
Okay. So how can you guarantee effectiveness then?
I just was reading the captions, but no, I do not think that communication must be reliant on sign language. Written communication is also possible as well.
Okay. And for my time. Okay, thank you.
Hello, hello, okay, all right. And now we'll be bringing Lexi Hill up for opening negative arguments. 6 minutes.
I don't think I need this mic, do I? Hello, everyone. I'm Lexi Hill. Allow me to provide a visual description. I'm a white woman with brown curly hair. I'm wearing a green shirt with a black blazer, black pants, and some black heels. Before I start my time, I would like to first express my gratitude and appreciation for the opportunity to be here tonight as a debater. For those of you who don't know, this will be my last debate. I'm graduating in 22 days. And I find the timing of this debate to be particularly interesting. It's the first time that we are opposing, the first time that I ever opposed another university is on April of 2020. So we are now almost exactly, interpreter error, April of 2021. So now almost exactly 2 years later, I am here with my last debate. The first debate was against another university, and the topic was on DC statehood, and a lot of our community members disagreed with my stance, and here I am again, taking an unpopular position. I like to challenge myself, and I like to view perspectives that are varying and different than mine, and I think that's the whole point of debate. I will miss debate. It has made me a better thinker, a better friend, and a better person overall. So thank you for that. I'd like to begin my time now. Good evening, judges, participants, friends, audience members, and teammates. I first have to acknowledge how awkward and uncomfortable it is for me to stand here tonight and argue against deaf people serving in the military, especially as a deaf person myself. But I have to admit, I did the research. I talked with my partner from USNA, and I have to admit the harsh reality is that hearing and effective communication is so crucial for military service. Even if we are capable of providing all of the necessary accommodations for deaf people to serve, it would still be impractical, risky, unreasonable, and let me explain why. USNA and Gallaudet has come together and worked tirelessly for this event and coordinated CART, interpreters, CDIs, and still, regardless of all of that effort, something will be lost in translation this evening. Now imagine that situation in the middle of the fog of war, in the middle of chaos, mayhem, which is typically what we see in battle. Much more information will be lost or confused or disoriented. As much as my partner Roy and I would like to argue in favor, at this point we cannot do that because there are two fundamental requirements to serve in the military: direct and effective and instant communication, and the ability to hear clearly. Those two are necessary because it ensures the safety of our military service members, it maintains unity, and it fosters teamwork with the ultimate goal of mission success. I also would like to define some key terms for tonight's debate. First and foremost, the heart of the qualifying military service is the requirement to be combat ready. The military's primary function is defense through the application of force, and combat is inevitable in such operations. The Department of Defense mentioned in their 2016 report, maintaining a military force ready to meet unanticipated needs is the core priority of a military strategy. They believe in operating with undifferentiated soldiers model, which requires every soldier to be prepared to be deployed and win against any enemy, anywhere, at any time. So to fit DoD's idea of what it means to be combat ready, we argue that it requires two key concepts, and that is the affirmative team's burden to be effective and instantaneous communication, as well as the ability to hear. This also proves that it's important that we're not talking about diversity in higher education or diversity in the company boardroom. We are talking about diversity in the military tonight. The standards that we have now to determine if someone is combat ready reflects the fundamental purpose of the military. That is to protect and defend our country, which is the chief most important goal because that is in pursuit of the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So the important question is this. Regardless of diversity of thought, will allowing deaf people in the military help us to achieve or not that duty? While acknowledging the value of diversity in the military, it should not be at the expense of combat readiness or mission effectiveness. The second point is effective communication. A shared common language is essential for efficient communication as it directly impacts the quality of work being done. Soldiers must be able to communicate directly and instantly with one another and then trust each other implicitly to ensure optimal military performance. The ability to communicate seamlessly in any environment at any time is paramount to the success of every mission. We do not need to look at the military to understand the necessity of sharing a common language. Even here at Gallaudet, we expect our faculty and students to become competent in ASL. And why? Because we see the value of having a shared common language. Most effective communication means a sense of belonging and participation in one's culture and community, as is true in the military. A study on speech communication metrics and human performance by Air Force Material Command demonstrated that effective and clear communication is imperative to communication in a mission to make it successful. So in a scenario where 100% communication was clear, the team was able to hit 94% of their targets, whereas in a situation when they were only 25% clear, they only hit 74% of their targets. Moreover, lower communication effectiveness was associated with higher likelihood of hitting the wrong target. In contrast with 100% effective communication, no wrong targets were hit. In the fog of war, effective, clear, and instantaneous communication is essential to carry out missions successfully without unnecessary casualties. In regards to the second part of our argument, it is not in the best interest to the American public to allow deaf individuals to serve the military at this time, as combat readiness and mission effectiveness requires the ability to hear. Why is hearing ability crucial for soldiers? According to the National Institute of Health, auditory stimuli reaches the brain faster than visual stimuli, with sound taking only 8 to 10 milliseconds to reach the brain, as compared to visual stimuli taking 20 to 40 milliseconds. So this means that when a gun is fired and the sound of the gunshot is processed, it happens faster than the sight of smoke or other visual cues. So a soldier can react faster if they are hearing. They are able to duck or seek cover compared to a deaf soldier out in the field. This will allow them to carry out their mission successfully in life or death situations. These milliseconds matter between living and survival and tragedy, not just for that one individual soldier, but for the entire unit. We cannot control the combat environments we send our military into. What we can control is who we send. Even with accommodations, deaf people are still not combat ready, allowing individuals who aren't able to carry out instantaneous and effective communication and to hear to enlist in our military goes against the purpose of the military and will diminish the military's performance, and that's the reason why we should not allow deaf people to serve.
Now I would like to call to the stage Trent Mora from the Affirmative to cross-examine Lexi Hill from Gallaudet University. Trent will have 4 minutes.
Can we have our time started? Do you believe that all deaf or hard of hearing people should be automatically denied from military service?
In order to meet the definition of being battle ready, unfortunately, yes.
Do you believe that the definition of combat readiness should stay the same as it has been for decades and remain unchanged?
In general, it has and it should maintain.
Do you think that the Department of Defense is always right and has always been right about who can serve and who has been able to be combat ready in the past?
I think every government system has a flaw within it.
So you do agree with that? Are there service members who currently have reduced hearing or hearing loss?
They are in restricted line, and if they have a severe hearing loss, then according to the standards,
you.
they are supposed
Thank
to
you.
be.
So would these same soldiers have been admitted in the first place?
No.
Do you think that all combat and operational situations require the use of auditory communication?
All is a strong word, but majority, yes.
The military often provides headphones and other types of hearing protective devices and equipment. Is that true or false?
I think that's your burden to prove.
Okay, well, it's true. So in the Air Force, they have ear coverings to protect the sense of hearing, sound canceling headphones. Military technology has also changed over the years so that combat is different and soldiers do their duty without relying solely on hearing.
All right, can you rephrase your question?
How do you account for the fact that technology has changed modern combat in ways that you do not need the ability to hear in order to serve?
I think it's a small percentage. We're not there yet.
How do you determine when we will be there?
In an ideal world, when combat is 100% remote, then I'm not opposed to reevaluating, but right now, technology is not there yet, and you haven't provided examples of the technical accommodations that you could provide.
Is it true that 90% of the roles in the military are non-combat?
I believe this debate topic is focused on being battle ready.
But that standard for the military, do you think that that standard should apply regardless of whether or not 90% of roles are non-combat?
Yes, because we believe in the undifferentiated soldier model, and in order to do that, every soldier has to be ready at any time, anywhere.
For any mission assigned. Are you suggesting that unique skills, capabilities, and value that deaf people have are not worth and do not have a place in the military?
Not necessarily. They could be in a civilian personnel role, but they could also be deployed in that role. They are not required to be combat ready in those roles. And so I think that that would not impact the effectiveness of the military.
Is it possible to substitute any hearing-based communication with other forms of communication?
Like what?
Sign language?
Like my partner mentioned, not everyone can learn sign language, so I don't think that that is a realistic possibility. In an ideal world, that would be lovely, but it's not a realistic approach.
I agree that we're not in an ideal world. Do you believe that auditory communication is always reliable and efficient in combat situations?
I think it's more efficient than other methods.
Would you concede that there is diversity in communication and modalities, and that would benefit the military?
Possibly, but I cannot guarantee that.
Are there translators that work in the military for those who use other languages in units?
I'm glad you asked that. I think that in those situations, when we work with other countries, we do work with interpreters, but not all missions require the use of interpreters or translators.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and so now arguing rebuttal for the affirmative is Jason Santiago. 6 minutes on the clock.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jason Santiago. I'm a senior midshipman at the United States Naval Academy, graduating class of 2023. Before we begin, I would like to state that my views shared tonight do not reflect that of the Department of the Navy, the Department of the Defense, nor the United States Naval Academy. Additionally, a brief description of myself is I am a Hispanic man, 5'7", with a short and faded haircut. I am wearing the midshipman service uniform with my 4 gold stripes and my gold anchors. All right, starting the time now. As my partner Trent covered in his speech introduction, we believe we have proven that deaf people, are combat ready, and that their service in the U.S. military is long overdue and is in the public interest. Exceptional Americans like Keith Nolan are the kind of talent we are losing out in this country as this policy remains. We are in a new era of society, technology, but most importantly, what combat service is and what warfare looks like. As highlighted by my partner Trent, deaf people very much can and are combat ready because communication and not hearing is the key component to combat readiness. Combat readiness and military readiness can be satisfied and met by deaf people. At the individual level, when the DoD defines a service member's readiness, they are expecting them to be capable of meeting all minimum requirements of training, either at the basic level, at the school level, or at the operational level. Readiness can mean many things at the lower levels across different commands, services, and units. But one thing that is binding in that overarching definition of readiness is the ability of being able to meet the enemy head on and win. Deaf Americans are wholly capable of meeting the enemy and winning, and that is a satisfaction of readiness. Our military today is not what it used to be. Thanks to the advancement of technology, we have developed defense capabilities to a degree that have created an avenue for deaf Americans to serve our nation just as proud and just as well as any other group in uniform. We must focus where our strength is derived, which is the service member. Currently, the military has restricted line communities that play critical roles in the lethality and the combat readiness of their respective armed branches. You have people in the intelligence community, in the supply corps, even in the medical and dental services, and they all enhance combat readiness. They are direct contributors to not just a Naval Special Warfare team or a Marine Corps recon unit, but also sailors on board aircraft carriers, those in the cockpit of an aircraft itself. And these are the things that we must do to reimagine that. The likely point of friction that could pull the United States into a war will come from the cyber domain. That is where we must meet the enemy headstrong. The negative is trying to subjectively argue a claim that illustrates this notion that deaf Americans cannot be included into our service. Just because the kind of communication is different does not mean that it is less than. The fog of war the negative describe is outdated. Technology and capabilities have closed the gap of potential communications that oftentimes during crisis will be limited on how we respond. This is not just confined in a deaf American perspective. This is also defined now with the current policy in place. We talk about, in the Navy, a GPS-denied environment where the military must adapt and overcome in those situations. And we train and we train and we train for the unknown. And right now, the policy in place is leaving us in this state of unknown. The status quo is still divided in communication. Why should Gallaudet University and the deaf community as a whole limit its potential? The undifferentiated soldier model, as brought up by the negative during cross-examination, is outdated and it's a fallacy. It is an institutional limitation that does more harm than it actually does in increasing combat readiness. Currently, the DoD is spending over $240 million annually for hearing loss compensation. In 2012, over 1.8 million veterans received $1.2 billion in entitlements for hearing loss. What does this tell us? It tells us that the military sees hearing and the loss of it as a disadvantage. We must re-engage with this institutional form of limitations by restructuring how we provide aid, support, and inclusion for Americans who are fit and able to serve and who also happen to not be able to hear. The military's refusal to admit Keith Nolan as either an enlisted soldier or a commissioned officer because he is deaf is symptomatic of a larger problem, assumptions to deafness that are rooted in language and attitudes. This stigma serves to reinforce discrimination against deaf people, something that is outdated and justifiably open to criticism. The negative argues that the sound of travel fasters, which means a hearing American will be able to identify a gunshot better than their deaf counterparts. They assume the fight will take place in the trenches like World War II. But we are not training nor should our policy reflect the actions of the past, but rather we need to enhance and increase the lethality of the force that is ever changing. The armed forces has been at the forefront of major progressive social changes that have spilled over into society at large. With the desegregation of the military, the armed services led the change for Black and white Americans to serve together. Later, it was women being admitted into the military, and then after, into combat roles. The embracement of LGBTQ+ Americans took a turn in the early years of the 21st century. Now, it is time that we reorient our perception of deaf Americans and their capability and contribution to the military. If you believe that there is a path toward a mission of service and are convinced to envision that deaf Americans are able to be in combat roles, then I urge you all judges to vote for the affirmative. Thank you.
Now I'd like to invite our first negative cross-examination, which will be done by Lexi Hill. Gallaudet University will have 4 minutes to cross. Jason Santiago from the United States Naval Academy. Lexi?
Ready? All right. You generally mention technology and technological advances. Could you specifically describe which types of advances you're talking about?
Yes, so we're talking about the movement of ground troops into the utilization of C5I, which is control communications and computers and the information domain. So it's instances like the advancement of the radio to, like I mentioned, the GPS satellite imagery usage, as well as unmanned aerial systems, drones, and aircraft.
Can you please specify how that actually accommodates for deaf people?
Yeah, so it's not about it being an accommodation, it's about it closing a communication gap. And so what the current policy does, it envisions deaf Americans as this disadvantaged group. What we're saying is that by introducing deaf Americans, they actually add to the newer ways to increase communications. And so if we're spending billions of dollars into these new technological advancements, which requires not just weeks or days, it requires years of learning and development and training, then we can do that with deaf Americans by introducing them, right? Creating a new avenue for communication for all service members, not just deaf Americans.
Okay, but you're still not answering the question about how those accommodations accommodate deaf people who want to serve in the military themselves. How does that actually close that communication gap specifically?
Yeah, so closing specifically the communication gap in that sense, right? I would argue that when you're going through basic training, there's different types of divisions that goes through basic training. So in the Navy, right, you have co-ed, male and men divisions, right, where they get put in through the room, through the basic training. Then you have all male divisions that also go through that process because they are specific jobs, people who get recruited into the Navy specific for naval special warfare. So I think through the basic training aspect, you can have an entire division of deaf Americans who are led by people who can directly communicate with deaf Americans, and then have a slow integration, an incremental step into the service at large.
Just to clarify, you're proposing a fully deaf unit?
Yeah, so that's the whole process of an incremental step.
Are you aware of what the top causes for the decline in recruitment are?
As in, like, people who just don't want to join nowadays?
Why they're not eligible? Do you know the top reasons why people are not eligible?
Oh, from what I understand, it is medical limitations. So injuries sustained or illnesses or things that would just like make someone unable to enlist or commission.
Okay. I did want to circle back on your argument about the restricted line. Would you concede that restricted line was for people who have temporary conditions?
No. Temporary conditions would mean that it's a condition that would then no longer like be the rest of their lives. There are people who are colorblind the rest of their lives who are in the restricted line communities. There are people who for the rest of their lives have sustained a physical injury, such as they've sustained injuries like knees or legs or something like that that would make them limited into other services, so they stay in that community.
But the restricted line is still expected to meet the physical requirement examination.
Yes, the physical requirements of push-ups, running,
Thank you very
and
much.
a plank, which deaf Americans can all do.
Thanks.
Okay, and now we will call up Choi from the United States Naval Academy for a 6-minute rebuttal.
Good evening, everyone. Before I start, I'd like to say a few comments. It's my absolute honor and privilege to be here tonight working with Lexi, Talia, Brendan, and Grace. It's been a truly eye-opening experience. It has revealed to me a new dimension in life, and for this, I'm very grateful. And I was attracted to debate originally because it exposed me to different lenses through which to view the world that I was not privy to, and because it helped me form my own arguments. And through this process, by helping me to form our own arguments, teaching me a way to think. And this opportunity to debate with Lexi was an awesome experience, and it would be a very memorable one. So, now I'll begin my rebuttal. For my speech, I'll be focusing on briefly extending our argument further, and then I'll focus on rebutting the points that the affirmative team has made. So let me start with a story. Imagine yourself serving on board a U.S. naval ship. One night, your ship suddenly loses all its engines, leaving you in a complete darkness with no lights, alarms, or communication systems. The only available lights are infrared, and even with them, it's almost pitch black. In this critical situation, you rely solely on the voices of your fellow shipmates to alert you, inform you of the situation, and give instructions on how to help. But what if you cannot hear their voices? How can accommodations assist you and your shipmates in this scenario? How might your mission be jeopardized? How can you effectively and safely serve your country? Based on common sense and real-life experiences, Lexi and I believe that in such situations, deaf individuals would face significant challenges in serving effectively, and that's why we oppose tonight's resolution. To make clear, I think throughout this debate, we have seen plenty of theoretical examples. However, we haven't been given many practical examples. The military operates on several levels of control. There's the strategic, operational, and tactical levels, and most of what they say is kind of detached. It's like higher theoretical, but we need, in order to make these military successful, we depend on tactical situations and how these boots on ground people are gonna react to situations, because in the end, it comes down to our service members, the lives of these individual servicemen and service members. And if they cannot be, able to respond to these situations because there's a barrier to communication, this stunts military readiness, combat readiness, and it overall makes more undesirable for the country. So now, to frame this debate, these are the main areas of contention which you ought to base your decisions. 1, whether the use of shared communication is essential to direct and effective communication, and 2, whether the ability to hear and speak is necessary for combat readiness. The negative believes that the ability to hear is essential. First, the use of shared communication is vital. Throughout the military, and especially in combat situations, great effort is made to streamline communication so that there is one less obstacle in the way of getting the message to the soldier on the foxhole, for example. To this end, a shared standardized form of communication is essential. And in their examples that they provide, they talk about soldiers, boots on ground. However, this does not, just considering this example, fails to account for all the combat scenarios that are specific to different branches of service. For example, in the Navy, combat readiness might look like being able to respond to a burst pipe in the darkness with nothing but voices heard from your teammates and perhaps maybe a flashlight if you can get access to that. And quick communication, quick response to this is vital to combat readiness and ensuring that the Navy is able to execute its mission. For example, also in the Air Force, or if you think fighter pilots, communication is through hearing in their helmet, through the messages that their commander sends to them, and ships nearby. And so this also presents another example where hearing is vital to mission success and having that competitive edge. And so, and now moving on to whether, so this ability to hear and speak, and this comes to our second point. The ability to hear and speak is crucial to saving lives. In combat, split-second decisions make the difference between life and death. Reaction speed is an integral part of combat. No matter how many adjustments we make to accommodate for deaf people, the nature of combat does not change. Still, the Marines that hears the cracking twig or a gunshot in the distance is critical to the survival of rifle platoon. And so this proves why the ability to hear and speak is essential. Now let's move on to the points that they made. So the neg talks about the neg talks about first the false assumption that all deaf people are incapable. However, this response to this, we'd say, can they all contribute to a combat role specifically? And they fail to give concrete examples of how combat readiness and how responses are realized in those situations. Also, they talk about combat readiness at the individual level and at the institutional level. Again, we mentioned that at the individual level, communication, one-on-one, the person is important. And at times, the other person is going to be a hearing person, and this requires that. And this means that either the military is going to have to enforce ASL instruction on all service members, and that's going to take 7 years to be fluent. And this could also be a source of deterrence and actually harm recruitment numbers. Now, moving on to recruitment issues they talk about. So they say that it's mainly medical related. However, we're here to show you that there are other issues barring people, and that these people are a more reasonable population pool from which to seek solutions to lower recruitment numbers. According to the Cato, roughly 4 million Americans that turn 18, 30% of them are considered eligible to serve. And the Pentagon figures that 15 of that 1.2 million are open to join the military. But there are issues that prevent this. So now we must address the root cause as to why why this recruitment number is such a big deal. And this is specific to the COVID-19 pandemic. An explosion in levels of depression, anxiety, and other mental health conditions led to examples of medical conditions that might disqualify them. A 9% decline in ASVAB scores because of how the pandemic impacted schools and education. And also social distancing made it harder for recruiters to develop these meaningful relationships between these young sailors or Marines or soldiers who are going in with knowing nothing what to expect. Also, the obesity rates from 19 to 22%, the source claims that few of these statistics will rebound quickly and that some will never recover to their pre-pandemic levels. So there's a huge population pool that we're neglecting at the moment, and this is enough to solve our recruitment issues. So for example, expand the already existing preparatory programs like the Army's Future Soldier Prep, allow recruits to have dependents, allow people with treatable mental conditions to serve, and forgive past marijuana use for examples. And so we say that effective, direct and effective communication and the ability here is essential to military service. Thank you.
Now, we will have Jason Santiago From the affirmative, U.S. Naval Academy, cross-examine Choi. He will have 4 minutes to do so.
All right, my time starts now. How does the negative define combat readiness?
Combat readiness could be, as you say, the ability to meet the enemy on foot, or but more importantly, the ability to respond to, for example, the other enemy's will, the application of their force, and the ability to respond to that. So, for example, you bring up the cyber force, people working in bunkers. There's never a guarantee that this bunker isn't going to get blown up or be targeted by the military.
Okay, so let me take it a step back, because you said something interesting, right? You gave a broad definition of combat readiness. Am I correct?
No, I think it was pretty specific. But
Okay, so it was specific in the sense that if a American service member has the capabilities to confront the enemy and win, then should they be deemed combat ready?
yes.
Okay, so let me provide a situation with a follow-on example. So actually, I won't even get to that. So what are the requirements for joining the Naval Academy?
So the requirements for joining the Naval Academy is, among others, a congressional nomination and a physical fitness assessment.
Okay,
And there
and
are
what
other-
is
and a
the
medical-
what does this physical fitness assessment look like?
Right, so I forgot to mention, but there's also a medical examination which tests for
Yes,
allergies.
we'll talk about that,
Okay.
but just answer the physical fitness assessment
Right, so
question.
this physical assessment, what does it consist of? Is
Yes.
pull-ups, push-ups, a basketball throw, a shuttle run, a mile run, and sit-ups.
Do you think any of those events a deaf American cannot do?
Absolutely not. I
Okay,
think
so
no.
moving on to the medical portion. What does the medical review board look like?
So there is allergy testing, hearing tests, vision tests, among others.
Okay, and so you talk about the hearing test, right, the audiograph. Do you know what the point of the audiograph is intended for?
Please clarify.
Would you argue that it's possibly because it's rooted on this idea that a capable human must be able to hear to a certain threshold?
Yes.
So wouldn't you say that that should be changed if it means that we can satisfy all other requirements that would make someone combat capable, even if they did or did not have the ability to hear?
I'm not sure I understand your question. I don't think just because, please rephrase your question.
Okay, so if we let's go to the operational sense. So,
I'd prefer if we stayed at the tactical. 'Cause I feel like that is
okay,
very
perfect. Yeah,
undergirded
so
against
the
it.
tactical level, right? What does the tactical level look like on a surface ship?
So on a surface ship, when they're planning or going through operations, actually, let's talk about response and this.
No, just answer the surface. The surface ship, what does tactical look like on a surface vessel?
Right, so it's people walking through these pipes, just walking to get their mission done, moving.
Okay, now
to
moving
and back
on.
across the ship.
Yes, now we're going to move on, right? In the Marine Corps, what does it look like in the infantry role?
So an infantry role, it includes, like, for example, it could be urban warfare, fighting in within like an urban situation. Into
Okay, now
buildings,
we're going to move on to
bombs.
another scenario, right? You're in an airfield, you're in the Air Force. What does tactical look like in the Air Force?
So it's the pilot in the cockpit actually driving the plane, receiving audio
Okay, so my
communication
final
from the
question is,
pilots.
wouldn't you say that all of those scenarios are different?
Yes, and in each one,
So-
combat readiness requires hearing, is what I'm trying to get across.
Under the assumption of the current policy, correct?
Under the assumption that the nature of warfare demands hearing to be
Okay,
able to afford
thank
quick
you.
responses that are necessary to make life or death situations.
All right.
And now we would like to welcome our judges so that they can, after some consideration, give some feedback advising both teams of what's most needed to include in their closing.
While the judges confer, we wanted to just recognize some folks in the audience, some important people. So if I call out something that applies to you, please do stand up.
We have our high school and middle school debaters who are here competing in Academic Bowl and Debate Bowl. And the debaters are debating whether or not
Animals should be banned and whether school shutdowns during COVID university were justified.
So we want to recognize those youth debaters who are here in the Youth Debate Bowl.
Who are middle school and high school debaters? Wow, look at you. You know, I wish I had had that experience when I was in middle school or high school. You are so fortunate. You're so lucky. Who's here from high school for the National Academic Bowl? Stand up. Who are the high schools here competing in National Academic Bowl? Nice. Hi. Fantastic. Look at all of you. Wow. I wish each and every one of you good luck this weekend. Have fun. All of you are winners. Congratulations.
And yes, we're congratulating everyone on being a winner, but we really have to give props to Gallaudet, our staff, faculty, administration. Thank you all for being here, supporting our event.
We cannot forget our very important guests, all members of the United States Naval Academy. Please stand to be recognized. Thank you so much for being here. It's our honor.
And it looks as though the judges are still conferring.
They've got a lot to discuss. And the reason is because both teams brought forth quite stellar arguments.
And I'm very curious to see what their feedback will be. What are your thoughts on the debate so far?
It's amazing. Just being able to witness this historical approach. As we mentioned, the team dynamics are new and different, never been tried before. I think both teams have brought really wonderful arguments and points. But listen, you're the experienced debater. What do you think?
Well, U.S. Navy, Naval Academy in Gallaudet started this project originally during COVID and worked on trying to get it. So we were prepping for that debate, but it took this long to bring it to pass. But our resolution in the past was also a little shifted from what it is in its current form. Now we have a tight focus on it being about being combat ready. And so I see a lot of clash of ideas present in this.
I see that both teams are well researched, that their arguments have been rooted in the deaf experience, the experience of military members, just trying to find that balance between the two, how those stories interweave.
It really is exciting to see what's happening here, and also to see whether or not minds have changed today, both those here and those watching online.
I really want to know. Have you changed your mind, Carmel?
Well, I have to say, as a debater, I really value both sides. It's important to know both the affirmative and negative positions. I'm torn here, I got to admit, but I'm really excited to see what comes in the closing arguments.
This kind of debate helps us broaden our perspectives. You know, we have all come tonight with what we've already known. And if you never venture outside, if you never open yourself up to this kind of experience, then you never change your perspective. This kind of question has been around in our lives for quite some time. You know, that idea of equal access, where do you draw the line? It's not acceptable for me over here, but I'm accepted over here. Where do you draw that line? And I'm sure these teams have really delved into this topic with all the research and information they brought us tonight.
And frequently we have informal debates in the deaf community about all of these topics. And
So true.
Those debates have raged. But this opportunity to witness this in a formal debate is a unique opportunity. What about all of you there in the audience? Do you want to see another debate like this next year? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah?
Should we do this again?
Great, great.
Now, I hope for you middle school and high school debaters, I hope that you go back to your respective schools and start to refine and revise your debate structure and how you host debate competitions at each of your institutions. Now, I see our judges have returned to us.
Okay, and judges, are you ready to come up and give feedback?
Should I go ahead? Can everyone see me?
Good.
How's the tech? Are we set? Are we ready to go?
Great to be here. We're all very happy to already be here. Good to do a great
Okay.
job so
I'm happy to
far.
be here with all of you. This has been a
this.
wonderful event so far. I think the point of this session is to provide feedback and anything that we want to clarify from those closing arguments. So, in your closing arguments, from each team, we will start with the affirmative. During your debate, you repeatedly said that 90% of the jobs in the military do not require being in the field. We would like to better understand, are you saying that deaf individuals cannot serve in the field in a combat role? And if possible, we would like to be given some examples, more specific examples, of that 90% of what deaf people can do the same as hearing people in a combat role. On the negative side, we have two questions. First, the affirmative brought up an interesting question about whether or not all deaf, are proposing an all deaf unit. And is that feasible? Why or why not? There also seems to be this issue of shared language. And I am wondering, is English fluency a requirement to join the United States military?
Did you add-
Would my colleagues like to add anything?
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. Looking forward to your responses.
Thank you, judges. Thank you for your time and your thoughts.
And now, we've heard from the affirmative and negative. We've heard judges' feedback. We're going to give you time to prepare your closing. And with that, I want to welcome Keith Nolan to the stage.
Let's take a moment to introduce Keith Nolan and all that he has brought to this community. Now, I just met him this afternoon, and I thought to myself, wow, he brings an amazing argument about this topic and deaf people, an amazing insight about this topic of deaf people serving in the military. He was the inspiration rather behind tonight's debate resolution. Keith served in the ROTC as a deaf cadet and moved forward in that service up until he got to the 3rd level where he was denied entry because he was deaf. He had beaten many of his hearing peers, outstanding service, was awarded medals, and very incredibly successful. He's been an inspiration for the rest of us in the deaf community about how deaf people can. Now, Congressman Takano named the Keith Nolan Air Force Deaf Demonstration Act in 2015. And that is really the reason that we are all here tonight, because of Keith Nolan. The bill was named after him.
And now Keith will come up and explain a brief history of the bill and what happened to it. So with that, Keith. Thank you, thank you. Hello, everyone. Hello. So I should start, I guess, by describing myself. I am a short-haired man with glasses, blue blazer, tie, blue shirt, and tan pants. First of all, I want to thank you, Jack and Romel, for those kind words of introduction. And I want also to thank Congressman Takano for his wonderful words as well, and for having been a champion for us these many years. I want to thank Gallaudet University as well for hosting this debate. And I also want to thank my own family, who has been there by my side throughout this from day one. And I think people may not perhaps realize how much work has gone into this, and I'm going to give my best effort at summarizing the work that has been behind these bills. Now, first off, there have been 4 standalone bills to encourage Congress to propose a demonstration program. One that would be a pilot program in order to see whether or not deaf and hard of hearing Americans could serve in the United States Air Force. It was brought up in 2013, 14, 15, and 18. Unfortunately, none of those bills made it out of Senate or out of the House Armed Services Committee. Now, if you have a demonstration program, that would have answered a great many of the questions we're posing here tonight. So it's unfortunate that we do not. Now, in 2016, the Senate Armed Services Committee conducted a feasibility study, and they had a report of 52 pages that detailed their findings, but none of those helped to advance our cause. Then in 2018, the House included a provision for this program and the National Defense Authorization Act. And the House passed it. We were on our way. And then, when it went to conference committee with the Senate removed it from the bill. If the Senate passed it and the President had signed it, we would have seen whether or not deaf people could serve in this fashion, so we were very close. And then in 2019, the Senate, in a provision in the National Defense Security Act in their report, looked to see whether or not they could reduce the barriers to U.S. persons with disabilities serving in the United States Space Force. And so along came a report from that saying that no, they could not serve in the United States Space Force. So in regards to combat readiness, the armed forces, in full view of the public, as stating the claim that deaf people may not join merely because of hearing loss. But they have current serving members who are living with hearing loss. And so what then marks the distinction between those capable of serving and us? So very obviously, I'm biased to one side of this debate, certainly, the affirmative, but I've very much appreciated this debate. This debate has been outstanding in having robust discussion of the issues. And I invite members of the Congress, President Biden, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the Chief of Staff and so forth to please move forward and make these not merely empty words and platitudes of congratulation. I ask that instead you move forward and legitimately come forth with a plan of action to allow this demographic to serve in the military. This debate is a shining example of why it is so important that we continually advocate for these positions. And with that, I'll close with a quote that I think is very applicable to the debate. A quote from Judy Heumann, who we've unfortunately just lost. She fought for the rights of people with disabilities here in the United States for many years. And she said, "The truth is The status quo loves to say no. It's the easiest thing in the world to say no. So with that, I'll thank you for your time. I look forward to watching the rest of this debate.
Thank you, Keith. All right, now we're ready for closing arguments. First, Trent Mora will close for the affirmative. Trent will have 6 minutes.
As we draw this debate to a close, it's important to remember the purpose of tonight's debate, whether or not deaf people should be admitted into the military. The affirmative believes that we have proven that deaf people are combat ready and that it is in the public interest to integrate deaf people into the armed services. While the opposition focused on limitations, we focused on what's possible. And this is nothing new to deaf people. We know that we're constantly told what we can't do or what people think we can't do. There was a time when Gallaudet's own board of trustees thought that a deaf person couldn't serve as president. The next time, there was a time when the Department of Defense thought that women could not serve in the military. And we now all share the value of effective communication in the military, certainly. What we disagree on is whether or not deaf people can have effective communication in the military. And if they can, is it feasible? The negative believes that deaf people are not combat ready because they cannot communicate effectively in combat situations. But I must stress that the situations that they provided as examples are very rare and quite specific, and are specifically targeted to amplify the ways in which we cannot communicate in every single situation. But not everyone can communicate in every single situation anyway. The definition of combat today has changed, and what it means to engage in combat has evolved. For example, the tactical level, which is on the ground, is ambiguous. We define combat readiness as contextual, depending on the mission assigned. The opposition did not provide any contextual definition. They provided a broad definition and then turned to look at specific situations in which it doesn't apply. The opposition also seemed to like to cherry pick situations that were specifically intended to pose a challenge and target deaf people. For example, the example of being on a surface ship and having a pipe burst and having no access to light, use a flashlight. That's another example of ways in which we adapt. Deaf people are used to adapting in ways according to how we work when we have different bodies that people who have other able bodies aren't able to think of. Innovation occurs when creativity meets novelty. Imagination is always required when new challenges arise. But honestly, yes, it's hard to imagine when we are so accustomed to maintaining the status quo. Tonight, we have provided many examples where deaf people can make contributions to the military. And I must say that the negative also neglected to address the ways in which we can address the recruitment crisis, which affects national security and military readiness as a whole at the institutional level. Our only argument is that being deaf should not be a disqualifier. I would like to address the judges' feedback. You asked for specific examples of where we can perform on the ground in combat situations. One example, if we could all use our imagination, imagine that there is an artillery crew, some of whom might be deaf, and can communicate with other soldiers about the coordinates and where they need to fire. That can be communicated through writing or text messages. People can come up with ways of communicating using various protocols, systems, trainings, and methods to accommodate, and again, diverse deaf people. So not all deaf people have zero access to sound. Some can communicate on a one-on-one basis just fine using speech and hearing, and only struggle in group situations. The 10% of roles does not mean that we should decline deaf people admission into the military. For example, again, in artillery, you do not need access to sound to be able to fire at a target. You need to be given the information, the coordinates, and then fire at the enemy. There are specific situations where, yes, having access to sound will give a soldier an edge, but I must stress that the military has the ability to self-assess and self-organize, self-train, and create systems that can all help address these problems. We affirm that deaf people are combat ready. We affirm that the language we bring will benefit the military. We affirm that removing the hearing requirement is an important step toward addressing the recruitment crisis. Deaf Americans are now in a unique position to address many of these issues. We can develop unique roles and specialized jobs that are much needed for our military. So it is in the public interest for deaf people to serve in the military. Declining them admission is against the public interest. Thank you. My time is up.
Now we'll have Lexi Hill from the Negative doing closing for 6 minutes.
Judges, thank you for taking the time to be here this evening. This debate is not just an intellectual back and forth exchange. This is of crucial importance that impact people's lives, not just current service members or the deaf community, but it impacts 331 million Americans. We depend on our military to preserve our nation's safety and to help to achieve the goal of equality, diversity, and the pursuit of happiness. Our esteemed opponents on the affirmative side have failed to prove that deaf people are capable enough of being combat ready and allowing them to serve what's in the best interest of the country. Rather, they are arguing that deaf people are combat ready despite not being able to communicate effectively and instantaneously. They argue that deaf people are combat ready sometimes only for certain situations, but even the fry cook must be able to fight if combat is brought to the military base. Whether they realize it or not, they chose to disregard our national security. For our national security, our soldiers must be ready at anywhere, at any time. In this debate, the affirmative team bears the burden of showing that deaf individuals are capable of being combat ready and allowing them to serve. Let me explain why they have failed to satisfy this burden. As for the first part of their burden, they have claimed that deaf people are capable enough to be combat ready only because it requires communication. But they have failed to provide the evidence that backs up this physiological and rhetoric that they present to you tonight. During the second cross-examination, they did not specify how technological advances can close the communication gap, and they kept referring to cyber warfare, drones, and etc., without really relying on what actually closes that communication gap, what happens behind the scenes. Cyber attacks, drones are all reality, but what happens behind the scenes? Is there an interpreter present for the entire time? Based on my limited knowledge of those types of situations, it still requires direct, effective, and instantaneous communication. We must ask ourselves, why are those people who are managing the cyber drones still required to be physically ready to fight in combat? The truth is, the military knows this as well. They still must be combat ready. And because we have an increased tension with our relationship with Russia and China, the world is becoming a dangerous place more than ever. And more than ever, we need a strong military. They keep relying on the 90% of non-combat roles without really addressing how deaf people will serve in combat roles, which is the point of tonight's debate. We have already shared why deaf people are not capable enough to be combat ready, to be able to communicate effectively and instantaneously, and to be able to hear. We have already provided evidence to this, a clear communication and relationship to effectiveness of the mission. That study by the Speech Communication Metrics and Human Performance by Air Force Material Command has already studied this, along with the National Institute of Health, that auditory stimuli is received by the brain faster than visual stimuli. In combat, that is the difference between life and death. On that point, we have won. For the second part of the argument, they have tried to justify how allowing deaf people to serve in the military is actually in the best interest of the country, simply because of recruitment issues. But in the rebuttal, my partner Roy mentioned that the primary issue that recruitment has been denied is because of a criminal record and obesity. By making systematic changes on that, and decriminalizing marijuana use, we could solve that recruitment issue without jeopardizing the quality of our military. And that is actually what's in the best interest of the country. Fundamentally, this is flawed in the affirmative argument because they lack evidence. This is an example of how tactical strategies is part of their burden to bear and how that can be achieved without effective communication, which is primarily important in the military. We have to ensure national security so that we can enjoy all of the other freedoms that we enjoy. John Adams, our second president, mentions, "I must study politics and war so that my sons can have the liberty to study mathematics and philosophy." This underscores the significance of national security and the foundation that allows for diversity to flourish. It is imperative that all enlisted personnel are combat ready in order to effectively protect and defend our country and maintain national security. How is this not in the best interest of the country? On this point, we believe that we have also won. I also have included the judge's feedback. To have a primarily deaf unit, is this feasible? We believe this is not. Sure, we concede that it would achieve being able to communicate in combat, but how would that unit communicate with other units? How would they communicate with their higher-ups and receive orders? Even with accommodations that we have today, it would not be feasible. The judges also asked about the English fluency required to enroll into the military. Before anyone can be enlisted, they have to go through basic training and demonstrate a fluency in English, and if not, they have to then take English proficiency examinations. They have to then take the ASVAB to prove that they are fluent in English, which tells us that the military also sees the value in having a shared and common language. The affirmative also mentions that we focus too much on the limitations, while they focus on the possibilities. And in an ideal world, deaf people could and would serve in the military with the best accommodations available. But this is not the ideal world. This is reality. That ideal world is not one that we have enjoyed at this point. There is no point where deaf people can have direct and effective communication, even in our daily lives, let alone in the heat of combat. Judges, I want you to think of this. There's a lot that's probably been lost in translation, and that might cost me the debate tonight. Now think about what could get lost in translation and how that impacts us in the heat of battle. That could risk life or death. Effective communication can be achieved in a shared language, and being able to hear is a crucial part of being combat ready. So in order to have our military be able to maintain its effectiveness, that must remain. If we can't ensure our military effectiveness, how can we make sure that we are continually enjoying the freedoms of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for us and the 331 million other Americans? So as you think about your vote, I urge you to vote in support of the negative and with the 331 million Americans at heart. Thank you.
Congratulations. What an excellent debate tonight that we've all just seen. Wow.
Yes.
Now, regardless of the winner, honestly, everyone has gained tonight. We have all learned so much from the information you brought. I know the audience agrees, right? Haven't we all learned so much? What an excellent debate. Thank you.
I know, I'm curious who won the debate and who the judges are going to pick. The judges are off to confer in another room. They'll deliberate and figure out who they're going to announce as winner. But for the audience, you know, I think we need a post-debate poll here to see, have any minds changed? Why don't we take a look?
Okay.
And
Same
we'll have
procedure.
the QR code over here.
Wow.
Wow. What was the previous percent?
We're still tallying. We have 82 votes so far that have been counted. I see we're still getting some more in. Ooh, the results look at 50-50. We have 127 votes that have been counted, 136. The results are still showing 50-50. Ooh, it's close. 188 people have voted at this point.
Okay, so, you know,
220
so
votes.
This was our previous vote, the pre-debate vote. So it looks like there was a change in opinion, and a big one. We can really see how showing all the sides of the argument is influential in changing minds and getting them to think about the debate.
One way to think about this historic debate that's occurred tonight is to really recognize the debate team captain, Dr. Brendan Stern, who is the executive director of the Center for Democracy in Deaf America, and as mentioned, the head coach. He wants to take the stage and say a few words in recognition of our seniors.
Thank you. Okay, a round of applause for everybody. I know we're all terribly curious who's won. I'm going to do my best to take care of us in the interim while we wait for our judge. I want to recognize our three graduating seniors here: Aubrey Mormon, Romel Thurman, and Lexi Hill. All three of them are absolutely pioneers with us. They have been involved with the debate team since its inception. And they've grown a great deal. I've watched them over practices. I've watched them through COVID. I've watched them in person twice weekly, you know, late nights, FaceTime conversations that went on and on, that all brought us to this point today. I'm going to miss all three of you terribly. Now, I do have a small token of recognition, of esteem for each of you, and I'm going to show you the gift that we'll be giving them. It will be presented Monday at our team reception. They'll each have a framed image that we're going to share with you on the screen right now. So this is the one that will be used for Aubrey Mormon. This is a framed image of that beautiful deaf man back there. Great. Thank you. Come on up, Aubrey. Yeah, give him a round of applause. And I got to tell you that Aubrey, if you haven't seen him debate, hi. Oh, I'm sad for you. I'm sad because he is one of our best speakers and one of the most charismatic speakers I've ever seen. An amazing storyteller, and you know it. So I have to tell you, at Morehouse, I will never forget a judge who watched his opening who was absolutely moved to tears because of his sharing of the story of a deaf black man's experience through segregation. And it's always going to be one of my favorite memories. Now, I also remember when, he used to have a lot of trouble with cross. He would panic, he would freeze up. But in the very last debate that he had, they threw some misleading questions on him, and he was, oh, no, we're not having that, right? And he brought out the heart of the question that was supposed to be there at the debate, and he did so with aplomb. Now, the debate team, well, I'll be the first to tell you that we've got a love-hate relationship up here. But look at that image. You can see that. Right? I have nothing but love for you, really. I'm going to miss you, and I know the debate team feels the same, don't you? Love you, man. So if you want to share a few words, Aubrey.
Thank you. As my time on the debate team comes to an end, I want to express my deepest gratitude. My gratitude to all members of the community. It has been my honor to represent you. Passion and intelligence. I have learned so much from each and every one of you. I've appreciated all of you for giving me space to have actual intellectual debates in places like the cafeteria, in the marketplace, in the dorms, each and every spot on campus. Even you, President Cordano, in your office. At our tournament, the judge saw my expression and my delivery. That's what the judges see, but I carry each and every one of your voices with me to debate. It's been a beautiful experience. Debate has not only taught me how to argue effectively, but think more critically, and it has also given me a sense of confidence that I will carry with me throughout my life. I want to thank our past and present coaches, Dr. Brendan Stern, Adam Bartley, and Susie Rosen-Singleton, who's here in the audience. Hi, I love you. Thank you, each of you, to my coaches, for your guidance, for your support, and for pushing us to be our best selves. To my fellow seniors, Lexi, Romel, I want to say that it's been a privilege to grow and debate alongside you. To watch each of you excel and grow in the last 2-3 years has been the honor of my life. Who's next? I look to you, younger debaters, and encourage you to continue to pursue your passion and never stop learning, never stop growing. Debate has opened doors for me that I never thought possible before. I am so excited to see where debate takes you. Thank you. Thank you for making my time on the Gallaudet debate team unforgettable and an experience that I will always cherish.
Bravo, bravo. One more hug, man. And next image here, you'll see Romel. There we go. Come on up here, Romel. Romel is one of the most intellectually curious people I've ever known. When he shares remarks and then listens to his opponent, he is obviously thinking so deeply about it. And it's one of the rarest gifts that we see in the world. Thank you for that. It's a treasure. You're a treasure. And what an amazing ASL performer, comedian, and it's no exaggeration to say that if you missed the comedy show we recently held, you missed out. People were on the floor with his rendition of Provost, of our Provost. And you gotta see it, yeah. And if you want to see his performance, you'll have to ask him for a rerun of it. So I also got to say, you are cool under fire. You work under pressure with a smile. You get along with everyone in the program, right? Everybody treasures you. You are an esteemed member of our family. Love you, man.
I'm inspired. Thank you. Thank you to the Gallaudet debate team for giving me a safe space to disagree, to debate one another, to bring forth new ideas. It's been amazing. Thank you, Dr. Stern. Thank you, Adam Bartley. Thank you, Susie Rosen-Singleton. The three of you have invested in us, invested in our team, and elevated us. You've brought us next level. The position I'm in right now, I feel very much that I can move forward with this next chapter of my life. I'm ready. Thank you to my three coaches. All my love.
Thank you, thank you. Good job. And last, Lexi. Come on up here, Lexi. You see that listing of awards? It's taking up the bottom half of her montage over there. It is safe to say that she is Gallaudet's most decorated debater, and we've all seen exactly why tonight, right? So, you want to know something funny, though? So many nights before a debate, she says, oh, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, and yet does it well, right? And then she not only does it, she does it incredibly well. Never forget that. For the rest of your life, I'm telling you, Lexi. And just one of my favorite memories is at the British parliamentary style debate, she was asked a question. And the motion was really strange. It was a philosophical motion that had to do whether or not if one would take a pill to become devoutly religious in a devoutly religious country and community. It was a very strange resolution. You had 15 minutes to come up with your answer. You reframed that whole debate and drew the parallel. If there was a pill to become hearing, should we all take it and become the same? And that parallel was one that really resounded with the judges. You are just oozing with talent, oozing with goodness, God-given ability, truly. Never forget that, please. We are all eternally blessed to have had you in our lives. Absolutely. There's such great love for you in this team.
You know, I came in as a freshman, and what I thought my college career would be was something different. And then I met Dr. Stern, and I think it's safe to say that it has changed for the better. My debate team, teammates, thank you for the laughter and probably some tears and all of the experiences. Ramel, Aubrey, thank you both. The OGs from day one. We've learned together. We have fumbled through together and supported each other along the way.
And I know you've had a lot of gripes together.
A lot of gripes. Thank you. Mom, Dad, thank you for being my emotional support. Now for you. You saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And if it wasn't for you, I don't know where I would be. And thank you to the rest of you who are here, teachers, academic advisors, all of the people who have shaped me in small and big ways. My college experience has been quite exceptional. Thank you to you.
Great, thank you. And I believe we're still waiting for the judges' deliberation. So at this point, I'd like to invite our U.S. Naval Academy coach, Danielle, to please come up and recognize your graduating seniors.
Oh. Okay. Oh, there it is. Yeah. I really struggled to figure out what I was going to say about Jason tonight. He is, I would love to describe him as a patient, calm, logistical genius, and that is true under pressure. But I think the moments that I will cherish about Jason the most is our joint moments of panic, to which Roy has often been privy. And that panic comes from a place of excitement and respect for debate, and it comes from a mutual understanding of the way arguments work and the way we think. It has been the privilege and joy of my life to work with him for the past 4 years. I am enormously proud of everything he has done at the Academy. He qualified to the National Debate Tournament as a debater who started in college as a novice. He is slaying academically. He participated greatly in running our Foreign Affairs Conference, and he's about to go be maybe the world's most amazing Marine that's ever happened. And so for all of these reasons and more, I give thanks every day that Jason was our team captain this year and that he has been such an amazing presence for us. So.
I just want to say thank you for having me. This is my final debate ever in college debate. I don't think I could have imagined that 4 years ago as a freshman, I came into the debate room with Danielle and I was like, I don't know what the heck is going on. And she's like, it's fine, just like keep signing up for tournaments and like you'll learn as you go. And I've lost. And we don't say we lose at Navy, we say we learn. And so I've learned a lot in the last 4 years, and I've also had some, really great highlights, moments because of Danielle. But I'm just so privileged, and I'm so proud that I got to spend the last 4 years being a part of this team, being able to lead it this year. And I know Roy is going to be a great team captain next year. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Want to make sure I have a good field of vision for everyone. So again, I'm so grateful we could be here. It was very exciting to watch both teams. Both teams did a wonderful job. It was really tough for us to decide who won. First, we want to say that whatever decision we have made here tonight is not a reflection of our personal opinions on this topic. It is based on the 5 criteria that we were given, which is sound logic, reasoning, and analysis, compelling evidence, overarching presentation of a clash of ideas and values, persuasive storytelling, and eloquent, organized, and civil communication. So that is what we based our decision on this evening. We will start by giving feedback to both teams, and then we will announce the winner. The affirmative team, we thought you did a great job of getting the emotional piece out. And we definitely thought you made great arguments about the public benefits of having deaf people serve in the military, deaf people bringing our ideas, language, and our ability to adapt. We thought that was very clearly brought across. In terms of improvement, we felt like you could give more specific examples behind your ideas. Check the notes. When arguing back, it would be easier for the audience to follow if you restated their arguments and then provided your responses. So that's just a few things you could improve on. We always have room for improvement. On the negative side, we thought you did a great job of organizing your thoughts and providing a lot of evidence and storytelling through examples to support your ideas. We also appreciated the restating of the opposing team's arguments. Areas of improvement include going into more of a cost-benefit analysis. The other teams spent a lot of time providing the benefits, and we didn't see that on your end, refuting those benefits. And we think both teams did a wonderful job, and we based our decision on those 5 criteria. Tonight's winner is the negative team. I think you're done with us, right? Okay, excellent. Thank you. Wow, it is such a late evening, isn't it? So, I am President Bobby Cordano, and I will describe myself as having short hair. It's brown with some peppered gray, and I am wearing a zip-up blazer. I think it's more of like a mauve color with a pink collared shirt underneath. I also have black slacks as well as black shoes. I am so proud to be here this evening and on behalf of the entire university. It has been a long night, hasn't it been? And a historical one at that. The 4 of you, as well as our panel of judges and the entire Gallaudet community and visitors, have witnessed history here tonight. History in very important ways. You have showcased the art and the importance of debate and mutual respect and respecting opposing points of view. You have done so in a thoughtful, rational, and meaningful way. And you have modeled for so many people who are here in this room. I think we have well over 1,000 people who are here in this room, as well as those joining us via live stream, who have witnessed tonight's debate.
And our Congress is learning from all of you here tonight and could benefit even more from learning from all of you. Communities that are out in the country saw democracy in action here this evening. Democracy is predicated on the ability for people to be able to learn, be curious, and be thoughtful in debating with one another. And I think you modeled that for so many of us. And people who have left are probably the youngest who are really getting ready for the Academic Bowl competition, so that's why you see them leaving the room. And I will tell you that they are our future, and they witnessed you here in action tonight. And it is with the greatest pride and sense of joy and honor that I stand here today to congratulate both teams and to thank you. Thank you. And again, congratulations. And for those who are here in the audience, thank you for coming. I think we all had a little bit of fun here tonight, don't you agree? And I am so proud to be president of Gallaudet. And the reason for that is because we saw not just a performance in action, it was a demonstration of the brilliance, the value that deaf people have and bring. Deaf students and our future generations of students who are coming into the world, being able to present their full selves all through the use of sign language and not having to suppress that part of who they are. Being able to showcase that with the greatest sense of pride, intellectual curiosity, and fierce debate skills as they debated tonight. And what I loved about this evening is that we had a great demonstration of deaf and hearing debaters debating with and against each other. Those who are using spoken language and those who are signing. Being able to debate against and with one another. That diversity that has been showcased here tonight shows the world for what the world can do going forward. And this is why Gallaudet is so important. This is the reason why our students are so important and why our faculty, like with Dr. Brendan Stern, where is he? Right over there. Dr. Stern, you deserve a huge round of applause for your vision in making this come to a fruition for CDDA. It takes a leadership and a leader like you to make this happen, with the perseverance and persistence that you brought to it to come to fruition. I have seen those hard moments from him and the patience that he's had to demonstrate to be able to work his way through the system and the bureaucracy of Gallaudet like any other university. And your heart is really what has shown through all of your work for our students and what we saw on display this evening. Thank you for the vision that you have brought to this work. I'd like to thank Provost Lewis. I think that your leadership, persistence, in making sure that we supported tonight's event and making this possible and seeing what has happened here tonight, showing the best of academic affairs and what's possible. So thank you again for your commitment and your support, Provost Lewis. I think it is time to wrap up this evening, and I have the honor of awarding the plaques to the winning team. So we have Lexi Hill and Roy Choi. All right, a round of applause to the winning team again. Congratulations. I don't have a plaque to give to the opposing team, but I would like to have the two of you join me here on stage, so come on up. Yeah, I don't know if you know what has happened with women's basketball, but in recognizing, well, I was just going to say that for the two of you, like the judges has said, that everyone here tonight is a winner. And the criteria is what forced them to choose to make a decision for who would be presented the awards tonight. We recognize your efforts and the way that you had debate so skillfully tonight. Thank you for being a part of this experience with us. And you're a freshman, aren't you? A freshman at Gallaudet. Wow, thank you, Trent, for being a part of the debate.
Thank you.
And best of luck to you also. All right, well, enjoy your evening. Go home with smiling faces, everyone. Thank you again for coming out.